Okay, like when she describes bridesmaids' dresses as a basic defensive strategy with biological roots designed to make the bride look better by comparison.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty funny.
It's just these little observations that make you see the world in a whole new way.
That's cool. And what else strikes you about her?
Well, it's her unconventional approach to pretty much everything.
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
Welcome back to Witter, the podcast for everyone who wishes there were just more hours in the day.
That's right, deep dives for busy minds.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a book that has been making waves, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus.
Oh, I loved this book.
It's fantastic. And it's set in the 1960s.
The 1960s.
About Elizabeth Zott.
Such a great character.
A brilliant chemist who is not going to let the world and all of its sexism get in the way of her reaching her potential.
Yeah. You know from the start that Elizabeth is not your typical heroine.
No.
She's sharp-tongued.
Oh, yeah.
Fiercely independent and challenges like every societal norm that's thrown at her.
And some of the situations that she is put in are just so ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's really amazing that she is able to persevere through all of them. And also, raise a daughter on her own.
Well, and you know what I found fascinating is how Garmus uses humor to expose the absurdity of it all.
Yes.
Elizabeth sees the world through this scientific lens.
She does.
It makes even like the most mundane things like going to the grocery store or falling in love a fascinating chemical reaction.
It's true. And I mean, you can imagine being a woman in the lab, especially back then.
Right.
I mean,
not a common thing.
Not a common thing at all. And so the book doesn't shy away from the blatant sexism that she encounters.
Yep.
And the colleagues, assuming she got her master's degree the hard way.
Oh, yeah. They make that very clear.
Uh-huh. And it's sad because some of those biases, though maybe less overt, haven't completely vanished even today.
That's right.
Which I think makes Elizabeth's struggles resonate with so many people.
Definitely.
So picture this Elizabeth battling sexism and sabotage at Hastings Research Institute.
Oh, boy.
While trying to conduct this groundbreaking research.
Yeah, she can't catch a break.
Really an uphill battle.
It's rough.
And there is a horrific incident that happens
that
leads to her being denied her PhD, and you really just feel for her.
Yeah, you really feel the injustice of it all.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So, through a series of events, Elizabeth ends up becoming the star of a cooking show called Supper at 6.
A cooking show?
I know, but this is no ordinary cooking show.
Oh, okay.
She's not just demonstrating recipes.
Got it.
Elizabeth is actually using it as a platform to teach chemistry.
Interesting.
So imagine her explaining how whipping egg whites is all about protein denaturation.
Okay.
So suddenly you're not just baking, you're understanding the building blocks of food.
I see.
And the audience is hooked because she's making science accessible and interesting
and fun.
And simultaneously challenging that notion that women can only be interested in domestic pursuits.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth's journey is already pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about the other characters that make this story so captivating.
Okay, who's first?
First up, Calvin Evans.
Ah, Calvin, he's great.
He's a renowned chemist, Elizabeth's intellectual equal, and the only one who really seems to truly recognize her brilliance from the start.
It's true.
And their relationship.
It's electric.
It is electric.
Yes.
They spar intellectually. They challenge each other's ideas. And you can just feel the depth of their connection.
They're a great match.
It's just so refreshing.
It is.
You see a love story that's based on mutual respect and intellectual chemistry. And I mean, literally.
Right.
So this really makes his support stand out in contrast to the dismissiveness that she faces from everyone else.
Yes.
And it really highlights that theme about, recognizing women for their intellectual contributions.
Absolutely. And then there's 6:30.
Well, yes,
their dog.
Their dog.
He's a character all on his own.
He is more than just a pet. He's this scruffy mutt with a very mysterious past. Wait for it.
Okay.
involving bomb-sniffing training for the Marines.
Wow.
He's incredibly intelligent.
That makes sense.
And picks up on human emotions in a way that you almost feel like he has his own internal monologue.
I can see that.
But unfortunately, 630 ends up playing a pivotal role in a tragic event.
Oh, no.
Involving a leash.
Oh.
And it just raises this question, like, what does the leash really represent in this story? Some might say that it's this symbol of societal constraints.
Yeah.
You know how Elizabeth, with the best intentions, tries to fit 630 into this mold that doesn't suit him.
I see.
And it's heartbreaking because it just reminds us that sometimes trying to control things, even with good intentions, can have these devastating consequences.
That's a good point.
And this idea of defying expectations carries over into how Elizabeth handles Calvin's death.
Okay.
Because she doesn't conform to the typical grieving processes.
How so? Instead, she tries to understand her emotions the way that she understands a chemical reaction.
Right.
Like she makes this list of potential variables influencing her grief.
It's fascinating how Garmus uses this to show that even in deep sorrow, our individual approaches to things are just shaped by who we are at our core.
Totally. And her approach to motherhood is equally unconventional.
It is.
Initially, she's reluctant, having witnessed how society expects women to sacrifice their ambitions for the sake of children.
Right, to just give everything up.
And while it's unconventional, it is refreshing to see a female character whose identity isn't solely defined by motherhood.
Absolutely.
It really makes you think about how society pressures women into roles that they might not even want.
Right, it's just expected of them.
But when she does become a mother to her daughter Madeline, she does it on her own terms.
She does.
And she raises Madeline with this unique blend of scientific knowledge and a fierce determination to raise a strong, independent woman, all while facing judgment from her neighbors and society for being an unwed mother.
Of course, because that's just not done.
Right. It's another layer of complexity to the book, challenging these traditional notions of what a proper family should look like.
Totally. And speaking of challenging norms,
yes,
one of the things that makes lessons in chemistry so captivating is Elizabeth's unique way of communicating.
Yeah. How so?
Well, remember, she sees everything through the lens of chemistry.
Right.
So even her descriptions of love, grief, or everyday life have this very scientific flair.
Okay.
It's like she's decoding human behavior using the periodic table.
Interesting.
And it's so hilarious.
I can imagine.
Garmus just weaves humor into the most unexpected moments.
Give me an example.
Okay, like when she describes bridesmaids' dresses as a basic defensive strategy with biological roots designed to make the bride look better by comparison.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty funny.
It's just these little observations that make you see the world in a whole new way.
That's cool. And what else strikes you about her?
Well, it's her unconventional approach to pretty much everything. She challenges those traditional gender roles, not by shouting from the rooftops, but by simply living her life authentically, even if it makes people uncomfortable, right? Her refusal to take Calvin's last name when they get married.
Oh, yeah, she didn't do that, did she?
No, she saw it as this symbol of ownership, of losing her own identity.
Yeah.
And she is not afraid to voice that opinion, even if it goes against all societal expectations.
Good for her.
And it leads to this hilarious exchange where she suggests that Calvin should take her last name instead.
Oh, that's great.
It's such a good scene.
Yeah.
You can almost hear the gears turning in Calvin's head as he tries to process this.
Yeah, like what is she even saying right now?
Exactly. And it just speaks to the beauty of their relationship, that they challenge each other, they make each other think differently, and ultimately respect each other's choices.
It's true. And speaking of choices, one of the most poignant aspects of the book is how Elizabeth deals with the aftermath of Calvin's death.
Yes, it's devastating.
Yeah.
And she goes through this period of intense grief where she's almost in denial, waiting for him to come back.
I see.
And she retreats into that familiar world of her lab, trying to find solace in the order and logic of science.
Right. So she's creating a new kind of order.
Yes, out of the chaos of her life.
Okay. A way to make sense of the senseless.
Exactly. And it's there, surrounded by her beakers and test tubes, that she slowly starts to rebuild her life.
It makes sense.
And she turns her kitchen into this makeshift lab.
Okay.
Just showing this incredible resourcefulness and determination. And that's where Madeline comes in.
Right.
And their relationship is complex, to say the least.
In what way?
Well, Elizabeth's approach to parenting is so unconventional, so far removed from that stereotypical motherly image.
Yeah, give me some examples.
Well, she's not overly affectionate.
Okay.
She talks to Madeline like she's a mini scientist.
Okay.
But you can just sense this deep, unspoken bond between them.
Interesting.
And they're both outsiders in their own way, trying to navigate a world that doesn't always understand them.
I see.
And I think that shared experience creates this really unique connection between them.
That makes sense. And it also highlights how the book explores motherhood.
Yeah.
And how it can be both a source of joy and a source of frustration.
Right.
Particularly for a woman like Elizabeth, who's always prioritized her intellectual pursuits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes her so compelling, you know?
Yeah.
She's flawed.
Mm-hmm.
She's sharp.
Yeah.
And she doesn't always make the right choices.
Right.
But her determination is just so inspiring.
I agree.
And she's not afraid to admit that she never wanted to be a mother.
Wow.
That she's struggling to reconcile her own identity with this new role of motherhood. And those honest, sometimes raw emotions make her so relatable.
They really do. And it's through Madeline that Elizabeth starts to see the world a little bit differently.
How so?
She starts to understand that emotions and logic aren't mutually exclusive.
Interesting.
And there's this beautiful scene where Madeline brings home a drawing from school.
Okay.
It's this chaotic jumble of images that represents her own unique way of seeing the world.
I like that.
And Elizabeth, instead of dismissing it as childish scribbles, actually takes the time to understand it, to appreciate the beauty in Madeline's unconventional perspective. And it's a subtle but significant shift in her worldview.
I see that.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected sources.
Yeah.
And that growth often happens when we step outside of our comfort zones and embrace different ways of thinking.
And so, you know, we've talked about Elizabeth's personal journey, her relationship with Calvin, with Madeline.
Right.
But we also need to talk about her impact on the world around her.
Okay.
And that's where Supper at 6 comes back into play.
Okay.
Because what starts as this reluctant gig to make ends meet turns into this unexpected phenomenon.
A phenomenon? How so?
It's hilarious to see how Elizabeth, who has zero interest in these conventional cooking shows, ends up just revolutionizing the genre.
I can see that.
She refuses to dumb down her language.
Good for her.
She explains the science behind every recipe, and she uses her platform to empower women.
I love that.
Encouraging them to think for themselves, to embrace knowledge, and to challenge those limiting societal expectations.
She's awesome.
And the audience loves it.
Of course.
They're just drawn to her authenticity, her intelligence, and her unapologetic refusal to fit into a mold.
She's like a breath of fresh air.
She is, but her success doesn't come without challenges.
What happens?
Well, she faces pushback from the network executives.
Oh, no.
Who want her to conform to this stereotypical image of a TV cook.
Oh, I bet.
So they try to make her wear tight dresses.
Oh, no.
Put her in a homey set and dumb down her language.
Oh, that's awful.
It's just this blatant attempt to package her into something palatable, something that won't threaten the status quo.
Yeah, make her more appealing to the masses.
Right, exactly. But Elizabeth refuses to play their game.
Good.
She sees it as a betrayal of herself and her viewers.
Yeah.
And she's not afraid to fight back, even if it means jeopardizing her career.
Wow, she's brave.
It's like this David and Goliath battle with Elizabeth, this unconventional chemist, taking on this powerful network executive who represents everything wrong with the system.
That's a great way to put it.
And guess what?
What?
She wins.
Yes.
So a series of events. Yeah. The truth about her talent and the show's popularity is revealed.
Okay.
And the network is forced to acknowledge her brilliance.
And give her the creative control she deserves.
Exactly.
That's awesome. It's a victory for authenticity, for individuality, and for the power of knowledge to break down barriers.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful force for change is simply being unapologetically yourself.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes Elizabeth Zott such an inspiring character.
Yeah.
She doesn't set out to be this, feminist icon.
Right.
She simply lives her life according to her own principles. And in doing so, ends up challenging these deeply ingrained societal norms.
Yeah, she changes the world just by being herself. It's pretty cool. And what's remarkable is that she achieves all this without compromising her integrity.
Yes.
She refuses to play the game, to conform to expectations, even when it would be easier to do so.
Exactly. Like when she's offered that chance to return to Hastings,
right,
the very institution that wronged her.
Yeah.
She doesn't jump at the opportunity.
Right. She's not interested in that.
Right. She's not interested in power or recognition.
She wants to do good work.
She wants to do meaningful work
that
aligns with her values and that speaks volumes about her character.
It really does. She's not driven by ego or ambition, but by this deep-seated desire to make a difference in the world.
Exactly. And she does make a difference through Supper at 6.
Yeah.
She reaches millions of women, inspiring them to embrace knowledge, to question the status quo, and to see their own potential.
She creates this ripple effect of change.
She does.
Empowering women to step outside of those traditional roles and create their own paths.
It's amazing. And you know what else is striking? Is the universality of her experiences.
In what way?
Even though the book is set in this very specific time period.
The 60s.
The themes of sexism, loss, resilience, finding your own path, these resonate with anyone who's ever felt like an outsider.
It's true.
Or struggled to break free from expectations.
Definitely. And, you know, we can't forget about the importance of friendship in Elizabeth's life.
Yes, Harriet Sloane. Her neighbor becomes this unlikely but fiercely loyal supporter.
She's great.
She's this no-nonsense, practical woman who sees through all the societal BS and recognizes Elizabeth's brilliance from the very beginning.
Right.
And she's there for Elizabeth through thick and thin, offering practical help, emotional support, and a healthy dose of reality checks.
I love their friendship. It's a beautiful example of how women can lift each other up, challenge each other, and provide that safe space to be vulnerable.
Absolutely. And then there's Walter Pine, the producer of Supper at 6.
Oh, yeah. Walter.
Who undergoes his own kind of transformation.
How so?
Well, initially, he's just trying to make a successful show.
Of course, he's a producer.
But he's also caught in that system, that tries to control and exploit Elizabeth's talent.
Right.
But through his interactions with Elizabeth, he starts to see the world differently.
Oh, okay.
He recognizes the power of her message, the impact she's having on viewers, and he ultimately becomes her champion.
Good for him.
Fighting for her creative freedom.
I like that it's a reminder that even those who are part of the system can evolve.
Yes.
Can choose to do what's right.
Yeah.
And can become allies in the fight for equality.
That's a great point. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
But I think what makes Lessons in Chemistry so impactful is that it's not just a story about one woman's journey.
Right.
It's a story about societal change.
Yes.
About challenging those ingrained norms that limit our potential.
Absolutely. It's like a call to action,
Yes.
To be more like Elizabeth Zott.
Yes.
To be curious, to be courageous, to be compassionate, and to never stop fighting for a better world.
Exactly. And her defiance of those narrow expectations is just so empowering.
It really is. It reminds you that you don't have to fit into any mold to achieve great things.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
okay,
here's a final thought for you to mull over.
I'm ready.
What lessons have you learned, whether literal or metaphorical, that have shaped your life? And how can you use those lessons to create positive change in your own corner of the world?
Those are great questions.
Keep those minds busy, Witter listeners.
Yes.
And remember, sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places.
Couldn't agree more.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Witter, Who Has Time to Read, produced by One Media. Please support the author by purchasing the book or audiobook using the link in the description. It's a great way to help keep the art of writing alive. And stay in the loop. Subscribe to our newsletter for updates on weekly deep dives. And don't forget to share your thoughts or suggest our next deep dive at witterpodcast@gmail.com.